Yeah, yeah. Are we quorum, Chair? Are we quorum?
Chair, yes, we are. If I can give you the apologies, but first of all, we are quorus as a meeting, so we can proceed. So we've had apologies from Councillor Harley from Dudley, but Councillor Bradley is in attendance. Apologies from Councillor Thompson from Birmingham, but Councillor Suleiman is in attendance. And as you've seen, Councillor Hughes from Sandwell is joining us online. And then also from Coventry University, apologies from Paul Noon, but Paul Febban is substituting for him.
Thank you. Thank you for that confirmation. Are there any other apologies that haven't been recorded? No, we're fine. Okay, let's move on then to item 2, declarations of interest. Okay, there aren't any. Okay, good. That's been confirmed. We'll move swiftly on to some remarks. I won't dwell too much on this, but I think it's been great. This purpose of taking these meetings around the region on location. We were in Coventry looking at the investment zone there last time, and we'll hopefully get to Wolverhampton. Next time to Wolverhampton. And as I said before, I think these board meetings are largely about approving and confirming decisions. The real work goes on between them. And I think going forward, it just will be asked Steve to collate some key facts and data that I can use when I'm speaking to potential investors, but also members of the government, the senior civil servants, because we need to take every opportunity to reaffirm the progress we're making on this, because we're not currently reaching those parts of government on a regular basis that we need to. So thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 4, the minutes of the last meeting on the 3rd of October. Are there any comments or corrections or clarifications anyone's got on those minutes? No? Okay. In that case, we'll move on to item 5. This is the reports on the progress we're making on each of the investment zones. So at this stage, I'm going to ask Steve Bowyer, the head of the West Midlands Investment Zone and Team at Combined Authority, to lead on this item. Steve.
Thank you very much, Chair. I won't go through as laboriously. We've slightly changed the format because I think we were probably providing overkill last time. So you have a brief narrative summary report and then some detailed dives on the particular sites and programmes. Good progress across the piece in terms of our funding, profiles, agreement from MHCLG for a 10-year commitment, which is good. It will be subject to the comprehensive spending review, as all public funding will be. We have received confirmation that the investment zone will play a part in the integrated settlement, which hopefully gives us a great bit more flexibility around the spend profiles. And we have an indicative commitment to next year's funding as well, and then the further 3 years as part of integrated settlement. So in terms of the engagement with MHCLG, very positive. In terms of getting the funding out to our partners, the capacity funding for the 3 hosting local authorities is either on the way or has already gone out. And we have agreed to a 5-year allocation set as well to give some confidence to partners that capacity funding is there. And the legal agreements for the other funding are all being drafted as well. So there's a comment earlier about accelerating delivery. So the paperwork side of it is going very well, and hopefully that's enabling sites and programs to come forward. Just to pick up on the point on page 7, the investment and promotion at the top there. I know the board have mentioned in the past about how much the investment zone is being profiled. So thanks to the growth company for making sure it is being profiled through social media and other routes, but also for building a very strong relationship with DBT. So thank you, Neil, to your team for that. The DBT is proving really beneficial. They're taking the investment zone to the Barcelona Expo, and they're looking at further expos in 2025. And of course, we do have our own regional investment summit in the UK region. So the promotion work is ramping up and going well. I've touched on the finance already, but just a few of some minor issues that we just need to bear in mind as we go forward into the agreements, making sure that the agreements allow for that comprehensive spending review fluctuation is actually the best way of putting it. Thank you, Claire. There is a small issue, as you'll see as we go through, around one of the revenue programs, which I'll touch on when we get to those, if that's okay. And then on page 8, just a summary of the remaining priorities for this financial year. Clearly, our plans for next financial year, securing the funding to manage CLG, developing a fuller investment and promotion strategy, and starting to look at business rates and how we use those in line with what we put forward with the finance directive. So that's a scan ahead. Very quickly on the programmes, I will invite the respective sites to talk to their areas, if that's okay, Chair. But on the revenue programmes on page 9, all going well. I just have to flag that there is a £2 million allocation for equity funding. That's part of the original proposition to government. We're expecting slippage in year on that. There's 250,000 identified this year, only because we're still working with a preferred route through Mineforge. But we just need to get some more clarity around that, and it is just stalling a little bit at the moment, Chair. So we are working hard with partners to make sure that does come through, but there may be some opportunities to push that further.
Thank you.
And then before opening to questions, just to invite partners to comment on the sites. Birmingham Knowledge Quarter, unfortunately, Philip Nell isn't able to make it and would normally be reporting on this. I think we've probably covered it in quite some detail, but the focus is very much on the proposition development, which is going well. So just invite Andy to comment from your work, if that's okay.
So Coventry People Park still on track at the moment. The next item on the agenda is the substantive and key part of the next stage of that, the full business case approval. So there's not much more to say at the moment. We're on track. It's time to engage, working with a great company. We've gone out and targeted over 150 key businesses, particularly in Asia, around battery manufacturing and supply chain, working with both Coventry University and Warwick University and WMG within Warwick University, in targeting the right people up and down the supply chain on that. So lots of challenges inside that, but it's on track in terms of what this board is.
Thank you. And Richard from a Green Innovation Corridor, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, through you, Chair. Page 10 provides a snapshot update of activity to date, working very closely with Prashant and colleagues from the university, putting together a number of different areas. We've now got confirmation of the levelling up funding. So we're undertaking a number of studies which looked for how we will invest in lab space, renovation of existing space within the Springfield campus, and identifying future opportunity sites as well. So a number of studies that are coming forward. A lot of it has been funded through the capacity funding through the combined authority, all in a good place at the moment. Lots of work to do, especially very early part of next year, January, especially it's going to be a busy month when all of these will come together and give us a bit of a roadmap for next steps.
Thank you very much for those updates. I've got a couple of points before I open it for questions. Steve, you talked about the equity fund issue. I'm just wondering whether, probably not, in a public meeting, want to go into some of the details behind that and any issues, but I just wonder whether or not, if you think it's merited, we should get a meeting with some of the key stakeholders, early in the new year, because I know we made a commitment to government about the equity funding, and we were talking about some very significant sums in total at that time.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I think if colleagues, so we've been working, as I say, with Mineforge team and crew and their partners, so they're around the table here, Aston and Warwick Universities are both parts of Mineforge. There are other routes as well. Just a round table might be helpful if people are happy for that. We'll convene that through you, Chair.
That's good. Good. And then just, I suppose, just one question for Andy, really, for commentary. Great progress on your work. That's fantastic. As you make, I think, progress with potential investors and you move the conversations on, it would be great to have an update on that, because in the meetings I have with the Deputy Prime Minister and Chancellor Exchequer, those are the issues that are really attractive them. They're interested at the moment. Interestingly, I spoke to some civil servants last week who were working on overseas investment, and they tell me that there is enormous amount of confidence and interest from business overseas investing in this place now, and some of that is, you know, relative to the turbulence elsewhere, but we are seen to be, as a country, a safe bet, and that stability we've got is to be really, really important for them. So we need to, leverage everything we can.
Definitely we could do that, so we could bring a report back both direct to you and into the group as well around investment stuff. I think the key thing for us, which has always been the case, and I'm sure Neil can lament about this from a government point of view, having a joined up approach with central government is the key that we need to go after now with the relatively new government. There's no way that we're going to allow investment on the investment zone part in Coventry Warwickshire without that aligned approach, shared pipeline, shared list. Both companies have been working with DBT, working with us to do that. There's still a way to go, I think, Chair, to ensure that we're all talking on the same page and we can actually get those investors to land. With all due respect, if we go to China alone, they're going to ask for the government to have that alignment. So,
No, and I believe there's a government plans to do some trade visits in 2025. I'll bring in Neil just for his reflections at this point. The other issue for me is, I think, is when we start to put bids in for an expending review, is the more we can align our ambitions, around growth in development zones with the support we want for transport funding and housing, the better I think, our requests will be met. If we're joined up, the government will need to be joined up too, and that's not happened in the past. And we can't talk to it before, we can't talk and look at these projects in isolation, either from each other or from the wider West Midlands. But Neil, did you want interesting reflections on progress we're making?
Yeah, just a couple of brief reflections from my perspective. First of all, completely agree with in terms of the global sentiment to the UK, particularly in terms of equity rather than necessarily occupiers. And I'd like us perhaps to have a separate conversation about the equity funding position, because obviously completely understand what Midlands mindful of there are other opportunities. So the capital investment aspect of this, I think, needs to be considered, not just the occupiers, and of course that's something that we pick up at the various moments, investment side and so on. I think the second thing I would say is we're doing really well, but everybody else is pushing very fast. So every other investment zone, there are a few of them, are really sharpening their game literally in the last few weeks. So we put pressure on the carpet, but I think we need to move a bit more quickly on some of this stuff with your point regards. How do you combine these three sort of nodes into one proposition? I think it's quite compelling, because that's when you're beginning to compete way above some of the others, rather than just looking at these things in isolation. I think it's a joint endeavour. I think this is more of a common.
Thank you very much, Neil. I'm happy to open up to further comments. Any questions, anyone?
Could I just raise one? We did have some time ago a US investor who was looking to establish a gigafactory and went through a lot of work. So I can reignite that contact in the US. It fell on stony ground last time. It may not be interested, but I don't think we should ignore the US, given we tend to look at the Far East and there is the rest of the world to go at.
Thank you, Alex. Any other? Oh, yeah, sorry.
Just on the Chinese market. So there are US battery companies, but those that have been investing the most have been from the Far East. But yeah, we should definitely explore that. But if you do have an opportunity, Richard, just to ask that the government is looking again at China in a different way, because I think there's nervousness among civil servants about dealing with state-owned enterprises in China. So has the UK figured out its position on that? There's a lot of Chinese investors on.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I'll bring in Jim and then Councillor Evans from Wolverhampton, and in some of the private meetings I've got, over the next few weeks, I'll be, exploring those issues very clearly. And of course, we have got a number of significant Chinese investors already investing in Wales Midlands and parts of Coventry too. Jim.
Well, just for lack of equivocation, personally from Coventry, I couldn't care less where an investor came from, whether it's America, China, India, or anywhere else. And in fact, we have all of those countries investing in Coventry and Warwickshire right now. And it's really good to hear about some of the soundings that the government have made, particularly in relation to the PM meeting, the president of China recently, and I think the thawing of relations, which I think gives us some hope. But if you've got a contact in America who's been looking to invest in a gigafactory in the UK, I'd love to know where they had got to previously, because as far as I know, that never come to our attention. I'd love to know who they would have talked to, because I suspect this is part of the problem we've had as a country, and you've sort of touched on it, Richard, is that the joined up approach from government has just not been working whatsoever. And those walls of information that have stopped information from flowing has really holding us back as an economy. So, I'd happily have that conversation right now. Tell me who it is, and we'll pick up the phone to them immediately. All right?
Thank you, Jim, for that point. And look, I want us to set the example here about where we're working collaboratively to leverage every resource and the skills and expertise we've got in the region. If we can do that, we'll set an example to government. I think we can demand the same from them. And there is an appetite and an attitude in government to work more collectively with us. But I think we can move faster. Move faster than Michael. Steve, Councillor Evans.
Yeah, thanks. Listen, I've listened about Coventry and Warwickshire's plans for a number of meetings, and it was good to get to the big. And I work in the car industry, and I want nothing more than Coventry to be the home of research, development, or production of EV batteries. I'd love that. I really would. And I still recognise Coventry as the original home of the Jaguar. That's a fact. But I am concerned, and I think this is where you can help, Richard, the ZEV mandate put in place by the previous government hasn't been helpful to the car industry in this country. It hasn't. Because, and if people didn't know, it currently sits at 22% of your vehicles should be EV right now, rising to, I think it's something like 28% next year. It goes all the way up and climbs up to 80% by 2030. And what they're saying is anything there isn't an EV vehicle, it's up to a 15 grand fine.
Indeed.
For every vehicle. That's got to be reviewed. Because at the moment, when we don't sit in a great place to trade, especially with the tariff barriers, and we could do without the ZEV mandate barriers, they need reviewing. And I know there's conversations taking place, but I have to say my experience with China, and some people know this already, they are the fastest growing EV producer anywhere in the world. Not because people want to do the moral right thing and get green, they're cheaper than your traditional combustion engine vehicles. So the rich people in China want ICE vehicles as a status, different colour number plate. People who are on the lower incomes are buying electric vehicles. There's a piranha fest going on in China, subsidised by the governments, and some companies will survive. And BYD has took over Tesla as the biggest EV seller in this country now. So China are a huge player, but I know they invest heavily in Hungary in battery plants. They've got about 5 or 6 plants. But there is a position, I think, for Coventry and Warwickshire. And I don't know what it'll look like, And I really do hope you find a serious partner. But I hope you don't box yourselves in. And I know I asked this last time because everybody was thinking it's got to be EV. We've got no choice. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. It's not. It's already slowing down. Hydrogen will also be a serious player. And as long as you keep your options open, and I noted what Jim said, and he's right. He doesn't care who invests, where they're from. They could be from the moon. He ain't bothered. It's about investment in Coventry and the West Midlands because it spreads, doesn't it? Just like what happens here. You know, there's people that are coming to the city. They don't live in Birmingham, but they'll spend money in Birmingham. There'll be jobs created if we get it right. Well, it is a tricky one. We need your help on the Z mandate. We need a bit of common sense to help car companies in this country in particular.
Thanks for that, Steve, and your expertise. I know we'll bring Jim back, but a couple of things on that, I would say. We were, and Nigel Triffield from University of Warwick was with me yesterday on a round table at the University of Warwick, which they were hosting a regional series of round tables on behalf of the Liam Bird, who's chair of the Business and Trade Select Committee. And the issue you raised was raised by someone on our table who actually works for Aston Martin. And I know it's very niche bit of the market, but you know, over 80% of their cars they make get exported, and they're going to suffer an enormous penalty. And that's not because they desire to sell more electric cars, but there's not the demand for them, and they're going to take a really, really big hit. So that is something I will be raising. And we must be very careful about damaging our own industries here that are being successful. And you're right, a very important role is to represent others and take these messages from businesses here back to government. On the issue of investment, let's hope we don't create even bigger barriers to attract that investment. But we also know once we've got investors here, they become advocates for this place, and they attract more investment, and it's a virtuous circle. So we need to build on that. But Jim, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, because actually what you've raised, is really important. I just want to sort of put a couple of things, by the way, into context as well. By the way, Aston Martin employ thousands of people in Warwickshire. Yeah, they're actually a really big player. That being said, the issue has to be consistency, because the problem with the news in the slowdown of EVs, it's hardly surprising there's going to be a slowdown. If you're going to think about buying a new car, will I be able to charge it? What's the charging infrastructure like? What's the cost and all the rest of it like compared to where we are at the moment? Plus the consistency was, all new cars had to be electric by 2030. Then the last government moved it to 2035. Now there's talk about moving it back to 2030. So first of all, that needs clearing up, because all of the industry targeted their plans to 2030. And then suddenly, as soon as you pull that rug, 2035, well, okay, that sends out a message. Is it any surprise that the electric vehicle market then slows down? And Steve will know, as I know, that there's always been this feast and famine in the car industry anyway, and that opportunity to take a breather is important for them to rethink their strategies going forward. But the one thing we're absolutely clear about, if the industry is going electric, that's why we've done what we've done. And I keep making this point. Coventry hasn't said, we're going electric rather than hydrogen. We're following where the market is going. But the government have got to play their part, and I keep saying this. If government don't give out that strong message that they support this industry and they support electrification, not just in terms of the manufacturing, but in terms of the infrastructure across the country, and as I keep saying, Coventry's done an amazing job on that in terms of electric vehicle charge points and all the rest of it, then the consumer will make the decision for them. The companies then will make the decision. And at Ford Luton, all that talk last week about this, because of the Z mandate, it's actually more to do with the fact that actually they've got a massive overcapacity in Ford. They're looking at where they can put their workers, maybe in France, that work in France or in Liverpool. They're landlocked, so they're not looking to invest in that landlocked site at Luton anyway, we know that. And also they've been struggling to get the skills there. And actually, if you come back to this region, we've got all of that opportunity right here. If only we get that message out there, so the more we can say about that, the better. It's a much more nuanced point, that is, about those messages. A lot of that was not to do with the Z mandate, it's to do with a big multinational making decisions about where they want to put their money. And if the government and our country say, we're not sure, they'll walk, and that is a fact.
Look, that's really helpful, Jim, and this discussion has been, it's very relevant. My next, when I get back to us, my next roundtable is with Ed Miliband, and we'll that clarity, yeah, we'll certainly ask for. I'll bring in Councillor Watson. I wouldn't mind just Nigel. I left the event yesterday at midday just to pick up on any points he picked up for the roundtable that I left. But Councillor Watson.
I mean, just on a quick, it worries me when we start saying about government telling people what they should do. It needs to be a carrot, not a stick. And Jim, I'll pick up on your point about the infrastructure not being in place, people's nervousness about going to EV. One is around the cost, one is the uncertainty. First you get it taxed, there is no car tax now, there is going to be car tax, then so there is a lot of uncertainty. But to my mind, if the offer is compelling enough, people will go to the offer. My worry is at the moment is that the offer is not compelling enough, and that's why we're seeing the slowdown in the EV market.
And yeah, and it's a global issue, not just a UK one. Nigel, any issue? I mean, I left the roundtable. Interested in any reflection you had on the conversations yesterday?
So, excuse me. So the point on the sort of fines was I think well taken. There's obviously a limit to what a select committee can do, but they were at the stage of they're looking at things to look at. They're looking for what they're going to focus on. And I think that point was well taken. I think more generally that, and this is my reflection from various conversations kind of I have with Whitehall as well, is I think there's an opportunity for us here to better link, if you like, skills, innovation and growth than lots of the other IZs are being able to do.
Yeah.
There are a lot of IZs that are still focused on building something nice and shiny. And I think we have an opportunity with the growth plan, with the sectors, with the industrial strategy, with the theory of change that the industrial strategy is based on to make a very compelling case. So I think I'd be happy to feed in a little bit more probably offline on conversations that I'm having with various people in London.
Thank you very much, Nigel. One of the things I asked Liam Byrne, as chair of the select committee before I left, was that I wanted to share with you at the next meeting the key findings from the regional visits. He said they plan to publish in January, which is good because sometimes the select committees, by the time they publish something, the time has moved on. So that's reassuring. So there should be something out. And that report they'll be advising government on what to do. And I think the issues that you picked up, Steve and Nigel's just raised are fabric to the discussion. So I'm going to move this item on there.
Sorry, yes. Point. So on the Z mandate, Jonathan Reynolds has announced a consultation on the Z mandate, whether it needs to be tweaked. And just a second quick point, it's good that you're talking to Ed Miliband, because I think one of the original problems with the Z mandate was that it wasn't looked at by multiple government departments. It was one department, I think, that to the business department, the transport department, the environment department need to be looking at this together because it's multi-faceted.
Agreed, 100%. And we've already demonstrated, I think, the way we're working here, we're more joined up, than the government are currently. And that's why I talk about leading by example. I think we need to do it. So no, thanks. I'm going to move this item on. I'm now looking at the recommendation printed on page 5 of your report. Is this agreed?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on then to item 6 on the agenda. This is the report which is considering the full business case for the remainder of the £23 million allocation, which is put in place to support the Coventry and Warwick Gigapark being site ready. And that will bring forward the power supply, which is essential for site development and attracting investment, and investors are increasingly saying to us that the access to energy and power is critical to the moving those discussions forward. So I just wanted to raise this issue that the board we're currently looking at is 21 million, which is beyond the delegated authority of this board. So any approvals or considerations need to go for full board for full decision-making approval. At this stage, I'll ask Steve, the head of the West Midlands Investment Zone, to present the detail of the report.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, hopefully members will have had a chance to look through the report, even if not the whole of the business case. It is an extensive business case. As you say, Chair, this is in line with our proposition to government for £23 million capital investment into the Giga Park, as approved by the CA board. It's in line with the programme business case, which this board has also approved. The £21 million is the subject of the full business case for bringing energy to the site, and catalyse 1.5 million square foot of development down at the Giga Park, the first phase of that coming forward, the Green Power Park. The full business case has passed through all our single assurance framework processes with an exceptional score of 98%, which I think is a record. So congratulations to the commentary team who've led that with Warwick and Warwickshire colleagues. It has also gone to the CA's investment panel, who have advised and provided recommendations which are contained in the report, and we're happy to recommend it. As you say, Chair, it is for this board to then recommend to the CA board its decision following discussion here. We can go into more detail, but hopefully members will have had a chance to review the full report.
Thank you for that, Steve, and well done for Coventry for the work they did and others on the business case. Too many times in the past, we've taken too long at this place, in this region, to develop business cases, get them approved. So I think I'm talking across every sphere I'm responsible for about streamlining processes, and good business cases help that streamlining. So well done to all of you for that. Are there any points of question or issue? Yeah, please.
So Andrew Burrow, Chair of OSC. It was an excellent business case, I must admit, and I did read the whole thing. The site is just up the road from where I live, so particular interest. I feel reassured that there is a backup for the site if we don't get an anchor investor on the battery. I just wonder what the process was by which we would say, I think we need to move to Plan B.
Okay, no, thank you, Councillor Burrow. I could have guessed you sit on the scrutiny panel. Those comments, but no, and actually, I think it's a really fair point for all of us that we always need to keep options open, which makes sense. So I didn't know whether Andy or Jim wanted to comment.
I can comment on that. I think, and thank you for the comments around the business case. We've discussed this earlier. We need to hold our nerve around this as a West Midlands region. There are very few sites in the UK that can accommodate battery manufacturing on this scale, and none are in investment centres. So we have a product there. We talked through this meeting about how we attract, promote, work with government on that. We need to hold our nerve around that. The Faraday Institutes that was set up by the previous government to look at the whole battery agenda as recently as September forecasted the need for 200 gigawatts of capacity. Just to put that into context, at the moment there is 2 gigawatts of capacity opposite Nissan in Sunderland, and planned to be around 24 to 30 gigawatts if they can get that far in Somerset. So the pie here is significant, and it's not just for private cars, commercial vehicles, HGVs, buses, micro mobility, grid storage, all the range of it. In terms of Plan A and Plan B, I would say that we're working on Plan A and Plan B concurrently. So the investment promotion I spoke about earlier, in conjunction with the growth company, with the universities, with APC, with Faraday, is targeting battery manufacturers, material component supply, battery recycling, innovation R&D, automotive, advanced manufacturers, associated logistics, and the ancillary activities. And they are all part of that list, and it's important that we don't work in a linear way inside of this. So we know that one of those areas, for example, battery recycling, we are talking to someone at the moment, and that's Whether that lands or not is almost not the issue, but actually exploring and understanding what would they need, what it would look like on the site, how would that come forward is really helpful knowledge. Hopefully it'll land, but if it doesn't, we've gone through a process. So we're very cognizant of what Councillor Burrows is saying, and I think it's really important that this group recognises that we're not just single-minded on one particular thing. We are broadening that with our partners to make sure, and as per comments earlier, we can bring more of an update around that to this group and to other colleagues.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Andy, that's great.
Okay, no, thank you, and a very, very relevant point, I think, for all of us. They need to be agile. Any other points or comments or questions?
The only thing I was going to add, if I may, off the
Yes,
back of
yeah,
that conversation, through you, Chair, is that point about this bringing, and I know talking to your colleagues, Andy, 30 MVA to the site
Yeah.
for that square footage. You've got the inherent flexibility to respond to your plans and things. I think that's what it gives you.
Correct.
Thank you very much. And at that stage, then, can we move to the two recommendations printed on page 11 of your report back? Are those agreed?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the next item, item 7 on the agenda. This item on the agenda is a report that seeks the board's approval that lists the sites presented by Warwick District Council relating to their local growth initiatives, which is part of the agreement we made with Warwick around their contribution to this particular investment zone, and they are at this stage looking to support the development of the Abbey Fields projects that they've earmarked as a priority for themselves. There is an appendix to the board report on page 127 that is marked confidential, and I'm hoping that we can avoid going into the confidential part of the report during this conversation. If we can, then everyone can remain in the room. If we do need to refer to it, then I'll ask my government colleagues to advise on who may need to leave the room. But again, I'll come back to Steve just to outline the report and the decision we're hoping to make.
Thank you, Chair. And may I propose that we take the report in two parts. The first part being the list of local growth initiatives, which is for the Investment Zone Board to decide on. And then the second part being that financial decision on which we're making a recommendation to Combined Authority Board, because although it's a reimbursement of business rates, it does exceed the £20 million delegations that the ISA board has. So if you're okay with that, Chair, we'll run on that basis. So on the first point, the list of local growth initiatives, just as a bit of background to this, you'll recall that the ISA investment zone policy is for business rates generated go to the Combined Authority for redeployment within the advanced manufacturing sector. We agreed with government at the time that there could be a no detriment clause for those local authorities that are generating the business rates, and that passed through the MOU through the CA board as to how we would handle that in the Coventry and Warwick Gigapark business rate retention site. And the first part of that exception, the exception from government was that the billing authority could put that to local growth initiatives, and that it was a matter for local management, i.e. the ISEC board, to decide and agree what those local growth initiatives were. So the first part here is a list of local growth initiatives in the report that Warwick District Council have put forward. Our definition in the memorandum of understanding was that the projects we would expect them to be supporting regeneration, public services and public infrastructure, economic development or similar. So I suppose it's a straightforward question to the board that they accept the list on page 110 of projects. We would agree with those local growth initiatives and therefore can be the subject of reimbursement of business rates to meet no detriment before we then go into the financial decision.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay, any comments or anyone want to add anything further on those list of projects?
I'll just say as a bit of an introduction that two bits. We're talking about business rate retention from two sites next to the airport, which are being built at the moment. So that's why it's slightly different. We're not saying we should have the business rates for the airport itself, because obviously that's a huge focus of the investment zone. And the second is it's an indicative list because obviously, as you know, when you try and push things forward, some of them don't work. And in fact, the second one has already fallen. It's not going to come forward again. So really, the very beginning of Appendix A, the list is, if you like, the important bit. We're suggesting it's A on retrofitting renewables for existing houses, low carbon, housing development and community infrastructure. So those are the three core.
Thank you, Ian, for that clarification. Okay,
So can we just check that is decided?
yeah, okay, are we at?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Steve, do you want to take us on to
So-
the second item?
Thank you. Yeah, the second part is having agreed that we now have, and as you say, Councillor Davison, the importance to this is that the sites are occupied on Segway Park and active and therefore business and been valued. So there are business rates likely to accrue shortly. So we now have a financial recommendation to the CA board on the reimbursement of those rates. And if I may pass to Claire Nye, who's been leading on those discussions with colleagues, just to take us through this bit, which is far more complex than I can manage. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So board will recall that the memorandum of understanding with Warwick District Council provides up to 90.2 million of funding for these local growth initiatives. And as Steve has outlined, the first project to consider for funding is Abbey Fields, with an ask of approximately 36 million. Due to the level of the funding required for this project, the final decision will be taken by CA board, as mentioned earlier. So today the board is asked to consider the request and make a recommendation for this to progress to CA board for approval. The Section 151 officer at Warwick District Council has provided a financial strategy and finance profile for Abbey Fields, together with the underlying assumptions and supporting reports. The financial proposal is a combination of funding for their borrowing costs associated with the project and also a direct contribution of business rates to fund capital expenditure. We have reviewed the information provided with the Section 151 officer at Warwick and are able to recommend it to you today. As outlined in the report, the ability for the combined authority to fund the capital financing costs is dependent on the generation of business rates from the two sites mentioned, Segway Park and Whitley South sites. Funding for Warwick District Council is capped at 40% of the uplift in these rates. But early data available suggests that the funding profile for this project will be affordable. However, it should be noted by the board that if this isn't the case, there is no financial risk to the combined authority. Any shortfall in business rates in the short term or long term would be met by Warwick District Council. Due to the nature of the assumptions in relation to the interest rates and the timing of capital expenditure, this report recommends that the final agreement of the value and the profile of funding is delegated to the combined authority Section 73 officer. Chair, happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that very excellent briefing, the work you've done, and ensuring that what we're doing is consistent and compliant with the memorandum of understanding and the rules we've developed going forward, and the agreement we've got with the central government. Any points or questions or clarification? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Just
Steve.
one, just to pick out the point about the legal agreement, which is going through the processes at the moment and hopefully should be signed off shortly. So that'll be in place as well as one thing.
Good. Happy customer. Okay, now.
I've never heard the word shortly in lawyers in the same.
Depends how long it's been going for, councillor.
And thank you very much for that, and for Chris updating us on your list of priorities, and that will be updated, I think, as time evolves. That's great. And thank you very much for that, the briefing and that covering the item with the agenda. So can we now move to the three recommendations on page 107, and are these agreed?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. So we made up some time, which is great. So just in terms of going forward, the date of the next meeting is penciled in for the 6th of March, and I was always keen we take these meetings around our investment zones. I'm very pleased we're going to be landing in Wolverhampton for the next one, and so we look forward to Steve visiting yourselves, and it would be great, I think, if we could perhaps kick off that meeting in a similar way we've done today about your plans for your innovation corridor. So thank you for everyone's attendance today and the contribution you've made, and we'll see you again on the 6th of March next year. Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yeah.
Can we just take the opportunity to thank BCU for hosting us today, Harris? Thank you very much indeed.